Hi, I'm Bobby Halton, and welcome to today's Mayday Monday. This is the monthly edition that Tony's agreed to do for us. Just amazing. He always gets incredible guests. If you missed last month's, please go check it out. He had an incredible interview with Chief Bellum out of Toledo about a fatality that's anniversary is actually tomorrow. So Tony, as always, just does an amazing job. Please check out the Mayday Monday that he does every week. But this is the Mayday Monday monthly, which is an actual video conference. He's got a great guest today, an old friend of mine, Todd. And so Todd will get introduced in a moment. We've known each other for far too long. But hey, remember FDIC is coming up. We're going to be in August this year. It's going to be a great time. Please register now. Hot classes, you can't select your hot classes or workshops yet, just because we're trying to work out all the space and all the vendors and all that other good stuff. But as we wade through that stuff, you can still register. So please get registered, get your hotel rooms. Don't get locked out, because I can't do anything for you if you call me in June. So it just is what it is. It's the FDIC monster. But we're going to have the fun run. We're going to have the stair climb. We're going to run in the sun. It's going to be beautiful weather. The folks in Indiana have promised me it will be 85 degrees and sunny every day. So with no humidity, they promised me. So it'll be absolutely beautiful. So we hope to see you all there at FDIC in August, which is going to be kind of interesting. But we know we're all ready to get together. We're getting ready to rip these face diapers off and see each other and smile and hug and all that good stuff that firefighters do. So much has happened. We've learned so much. And I don't mean just about the COVID issues, but we've learned so much in terms of structural firefighting. There's been so much stuff going on, wildland, technical rescue, that we need to get together and share and talk and exchange. And that's what Tony does. Tony takes great pains to put these things together. They're really just second to none in their quality and thoroughness. And it's really a testament to his dedication to the fire service and his dedication to his fellow firefighters that he does everything he can to try to learn from the things that have happened in the past. They say experience holds a dear school and fools will learn in no other. And they say that, a wise man learns from experience, but a genius learns from the experience of others. So Tony's really kind of taken that to a new level. So without any further ado, I'll bring up the man in the moment and have him introduce Todd, and we're gonna have a great session. So Tony, good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Bobby. You too. It's really good to see you. Yes, last month's Mayday Monday, please check it out. Like you said, we're filming this on January 26th. The anniversary of that is January 27th. Two good firefighters were lost there. They lost Steve Masinski and Jamie Dickman. Please go learn about those two members. Toledo, will recover from that loss, but they want to remember and keep that going on, keep that memory going. So please go look at that. It was a good talk with Mike. Mike's got a great review of that. He served on the review board after that fire, so he's got some really good insight on that. So please check that out. This month kind of does it for us. It's February, right? February, Valentine's Day. We have love, heart, Cupids. It's really about the heart. And America, not just the fire service, not just the fire service, celebrates and works on heart. The Heart Health Month for the nation, for the country, is February. So that's what we're going to talk about. This Mayday Monday, we're going to take advantage of that and work on that because it's the biggest killer, right? That, cancer, are the real big killers here. Going into burning buildings isn't what's killing us. I have a graphic I want to show you. Six firefighters were killed, directly engaged in structural fire attack in 2020. Six. Now, 2020, we know there's a lot of COVID line of duty deaths. We'll learn about that. And hopefully we're going to turn the corner on this COVID virus here soon. The vaccines are out. If you go get that, that'll help, right? Everything else that we're doing is going to help us turn the corner on that. And we won't see those numbers in 2021 and hopefully 2022. And
Tony, to be honest with you, we're not seeing them now. We're seeing scheduling made easy.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, we sure are. Not to be a wise guy, but yes, only in structural firefighting, the numbers are greatly decreased. But obviously, medical events and traffic events and things of that nature are really what really make the numbers, jump. So six men and women died, and as a result of there we go. So now we've got it. We got 6. There you go. There you go.
6 firefighters died while engaged in structure fire attack in 2020. Again, those numbers are great, right? Those numbers are way down, and we're doing our part as far as structural firefighters go. Structural firefighting goes. The problem becomes now in our other stuff, our cardiac deaths are still high. This month's Mayday Monday, Heart Health Month, we're going to emphasize apparatus maintenance. Apparatus maintenance. We all love a clean and well-maintained fire truck, but the fire truck's got to be staffed by firefighters. And in order to get good firefighters, we not only have to be trained in firefighting and that kind of stuff, but we have to take care of our heart, take care of our health, and get those maintenance, do the maintenance on our cardiac apparatus. It's pretty important. So this month we're going to talk to Todd LeDuc here, Chief LeDuc. I met Chief LeDuc in the 2019, I think it was 2019, Congressional Fire Service Institute weekend there at the events. We met, we talked about, I introduced him to one of our friends here in DC that does the food on the stove stuff, which we'll talk a little bit about better, about eating healthy. So we talked to Chief LeDuc there. And I want to give him a chance now to kind of introduce himself. I'm going to get out of this screen sharing and get back to our people here. And Chief, if you'll take a couple seconds here and introduce yourself, tell us what you got going on now that you're retired from the front line, and we'll get more into your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, let me just say I'm thrilled and humbled, Tony, to join you and with great friends, Bobby and Pete as well. So thanks for having me, and thanks for the work you're doing with this segment monthly to help get the word out. So as you mentioned, I retired in 2019, just a couple months after you and I met. Seems like eons ago when we were going to conferences. After a wonderful 30-year career at Broward County Fire Rescue down here in South Florida, retired as Executive Assistant Chief. I joke all the time, I got one day of retirement in, 18 holes of golf, and the following day, I followed really my passion, and I had a tremendous opportunity to join a company called LifeScan Wellness Centers. They had done my NFPA annual early detection physicals at Broward County for a decade. And now they've expanded nationally, seeing about just under 50,000 firefighters and law enforcement officers across the United States. So it's where my passion's been, serving on the board of the IFC's Safety, Health, and Survival section. Been blessed with Bobby's help to bring a bunch of smarter people than I together to write a book on surviving the fire service. And you're spot on, Tony. We continue, unfortunately, to have a repetitive cycle that we see, that we continue to lose brothers and sisters from preventable cardiac death and disability. So glad that we can do a little bit of a deep dive in this in the time we have today, and hopefully bring awareness during National Heart Month.
So why do you think we're still beating our heads about this cardiac thing, and why hasn't the fire service shut down or stopped to try and get drilled down on it, if you will, or really emphasize this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's often frustrating, I'm sure, to others like it is to myself. And I think it's probably, multifactorial answer, couplefold. You had showed the IFC this past year did a campaign on if you don't feel well, don't make it your farewell. So, when I remember going through medic school, the one thing they taught you is the first sign of a heart attack is denial, particularly in males. So here we have, a stereotypical male-dominated in many ways still fire service, with thinking that we sometimes are larger than life in terms of what we do. And certainly we can't be suffering from an event. But I think the other issue that we're finding out through the great work of friends and colleagues, such as Denise Smith and Dr. Stephanus Kales and Gavin Horn and others, is that we need to do a better job with medical screening and annual medical exams. I think in 2016, the IFC did some survey research and showed still 20% of career departments weren't providing physicals. I think the number was closer to 40% of volunteer departments. Many of those that were getting physicals were simply going to a provider, maybe their own physician, that really was not aware of some of the occupational risk that firefighters face for cardiac events that is much different from the general population. I mean, to kind of just lay it on the table, we know from the research that's out there, 80% of our sudden cardiac deaths in firefighters have underlying coronary artery disease, and at the same time have enlarged left ventricle or enlargement of the heart. Both of those can be managed, but obviously early detection is key. So some of the science is evolving to say we need to be doing more thorough and aggressive screenings. And then it's a complex interplay, right? You touched on, nutrition, but certainly modifiable risk factors. We know firefighters have a higher degree of obesity than general population from Dr. Sarah Jenke's research. We know heat stress plays a tremendous role, dehydration being a contributing factor to not only increased blood viscosity, but clotting factor as well. And then simple things that sometimes we don't even know we're unfortunately dealing with, such as high blood pressure, 12 times higher risk of a sudden cardiac death in a firefighter versus a high blood pressure, while it still needs to be addressed in other occupations, the extreme. We've all heard, tactical athletes, we know that the work that we're doing when we're on the fire ground is much different than other occupations. And it's not a coincidence that the majority of cardiac deaths and events, and I think that's important, right? Because we always talk on that 50% or so of on-duty deaths are cardiac. But we know, again, from the research that's out there, there's anywhere between 17 and 27 events. So they survive, they don't die, but they're cardiac cripples. They're done. They can't do the job anymore. They have short of breath and they go up a flight of stairs. So it's important for us to keep in mind that the risk, if we don't address some of the things that we can control our blood pressure, we can control our weight, we can control what we eat. Those have significantly profound, greater effects on firefighters than they do other professions. So I know a little bit of a long-winded answer, but it's unfortunately, I think it's not a one-stop shop solution. It's multi-pieces of putting some of the solutions together in an overall approach to cardiac wellness.
That was long-winded, yes, but it's obvious that over the last few years, the research has gotten tremendous, right? The people you mentioned there, I think, again, if you've been paying attention to the fire service, Denise Smith, Sarah Jenke, some of these Gavin Horn, all of these people are investing, right, a lot of time and effort, their life studies into these things. Now, here's our opportunity to maybe listen to them, right? You talked about last year with the IAFC, and I know that Chief Ludwig, when he was the president there, right, that was his mission, was to get this thing going with the, if you don't feel well, don't make it your farewell. And that hopefully if we bang the drum enough, right, that people will listen. This stat here, and you kind of touched on it. This one is just baffles me, right? That the non-fatal attacks, that if it's like 17-1, right? With every one line of duty death that is a cardiac event, there are 17 non-fatal events. Again, I mean, how much more evidence do we need, right? And
So
this
just
goes back to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
just for a point of clarification, there's 17 that we know of. So
Yeah.
be very clear about that. In other words, you can have a minor cardiac event and really not even be cognizant of it. So cardiovascular damage is cumulative in many cases. And the other thing to remember too is that men and women in the medical field have devoted themselves to sudden cardiac death, which still is a fascinating piece of research, right? Probably one of the most famous people is Dr. Zoll. If you think about Zoll medical equipment, that's what got him interested in the entire, constructs and ideas and concepts that he went on to build. So when we talk about, firefighters, and I think some of the reasons why our numbers are higher, as Todd so eloquently pointed out, is because our work is so strenuous. And the other thing about our work is there's generally not a warm-up period. In other words, you don't get to a fire and start stretching it out and all that other good stuff. And oftentimes there's no ability to pace yourself, which is a problem. So cardiovascular training, although important, is in and of itself not a silver bullet either. I mean, think of the great famous runners who were in incredible cardiovascular condition, who actually died from sudden cardiac death, and that their hearts stopped. So there's still a ton of research to be done, but we do know that the combination of physical stress and heat stress are precursors to cardiac events. And we also know that the presence of any kind of pre-existing arteriosclerotic disease exacerbates that dramatically. So the things that Todd talks about, not just your general physical, but a physical where you really, get a screening, right? You look for buildup in your arteries and you look for all of these things, is immensely important. And it can also catch other things like cancers. So well worth the investment for a union to lobby hard as part of a package to have annual screenings. And when you do that, to hook up with a reliable company that does them professionally. And, it's always economy of scale, right? So if you're going in to do one-off, there's one price. But if you say, hey, we want to do 100 people, or we want to do 80 people, or we want to do 500 people, obviously the price drops dramatically. So, just because, if you go online right now and you go to one of these corporations and it says, oh, to do the whole scan is whatever it is, say $100 or $500, obviously economy of scale will go down. So one of the things we really want to recommend is physical conditioning. And I get it. Cardiac day is not everybody's favorite, but it's got to become more popular. It just does. If you like the recumbent bike, get on the recumbent bike. If you like the elliptical or the treadmill, whatever it is, get on it. If you like running the streets, good for you. If your knees can handle it, get out there and do it, right? But you got to work that cardiac muscle. If you don't, you put yourself and your crew at risk, because if you have an event, there's 2 or 3 other people that have to deal with your event, and then they can't deal with what we showed up to try to deal with. So, hugely important topic. And I think like the fun runs that we do and the stair climbs and stuff like that, I think we should encourage more of that, because it gives you a motivation to stay in some kind of condition. You know what I mean? And it's always age dependent. I get it. Men and women my age obviously aren't going to be able to run as much as Tony could possibly run, and younger people. But we can still do what we can do and stay fit and limber. And and I did a nonlinear, bidimensional, multifaceted, extensive study of it, and I discovered that there's no old fat guys. So.
No, so I think that you touched on a lot there too. Not as long-winded as Todd's, but I mean it's still good. But you guys know this, and I know, right? I know firefighter survival stuff, where I've learned a lot about that. the fire service needs this kind of information. So the studies that are coming out are very important. You touched on physical fitness there, and this is not my flow, but this is jumping all over the place, but this is good, right? So ultimately, right, when we think about physical fitness, I think a lot of firefighters think about they got to get a gym membership, right? They got to get these crazy shoes. They're going to run a mile. They're going to run 5 miles, whatever they're going to do. But ultimately, it comes down to just doing something, right? Do something. Like you said, cardiac, maybe some resistance, so you can still you can build a little bit of muscle, but do something. Don't do nothing. Don't go sit on your recliner. Don't sit around the firehouse and complain. Get out and just do something. Even if you guys go out and walk the track, right? And while you're walking the track, you talk crap about everybody. I know that's what you do, but it's going to get you out doing something. Just do something. What do you think about Chief LeDuc? Is there the golden silver bullet, if you will, for physical fitness?
You know, my dear friend Denise Smith always, says if there was a magic pill to take, it would be exercise. And I think you just touched on it. I mean, we're all on a different spectrum of where we're at fitness wise. One of the beauties of the physical exam that we do at LifeScan is we incorporate with an exercise physiologist the NFPA 1583 fitness assessment. So we actually give you a snapshot of where your fitness status is today, and then what you can do over the course of the coming year to improve that. I joke all the time. I'm sure you have the same in DC and every other department in the country where I retired from. We had our folks that were the CrossFitters that were hanging from the ceilings, and we had, those in the middle that were, 15, 20 years on the job that were out walking or maybe just doing some light PT. And then I had, the stations that if they could just get up and do some stretching to start off, that would be an accomplishment. So, I think it's important for us all to get a baseline, recognizing just like the American Fire Service, there's very little one size fits all. What the reality is, though, is the job, right? When we go to work, that doesn't change. Those strenuous rigors that we're going to be faced with will always be there. So we need to, I hate to put anyone in a bucket or a cookie cutter, but we need to do individual baseline assessments on where we each are and then build upon that. I mean, we know you can go to ifc.org and look up the F-STAR posters that show how many METs you need to be able to perform, to do search and rescue. 14 METs. For me, doing 6 miles on a treadmill with no incline, that's 6 METs with my weight. And so it's just something we need to be cognizant of, where we're at, and always helps to do it as a group, right, when we're in the house. But it's really something that we have to make a conscious effort, even when we're off the job, to put time aside, because professional athletes is really what we've shown firefighters when we go to work have to be performing at those same metabolic levels as professional athletes. So we need to condition our thinking that a good portion of, you mentioned apparatus checkout, we spend a good amount of our first hour or so of our shift typically checking our apparatus. Well, our body is one of the most crucial apparatus that we have in the fire service, and we need to really start maybe just thinking about it a little bit differently when we prioritize.
And I think one of the three other resources I'll throw out there, one is Dr. Brown's study from Indianapolis, where he studied, he embedded with firefighters. They did blood gases, they had people wired up, and when they went to jobs, they found that the cardiovascular rate and everything else rose dramatically, but it rose higher among the less experienced, which was very, very interesting. So as crew members and partners and teammates, we need to be, looking at one another and realizing that, anything we can do to lower some of the emotional component can help also to lower some of the stress and the cortisol and all the other chemicals that start to flow. The other two resources, obviously functional fitness, Dan Carrigan's book, is fantastic because, you know, just, and don't disrespect the CrossFit. I think that's an amazing program, and a lot of my friends get tremendous benefit from it. But Dan's really looked at what we do. So that's a great resource. And the other resource that I've been able to avail myself with is a group called, well, there's O2X. They do a great job as well. And that's, you know, Paul and Adam, and you can't do better there. But there's also a guy named Brian White who does Hit and Run Fitness. And Brian is an amazing guy, really into functional fitness and wellness. And he can really point you in the right Hit and Run Fitness if you Google it, you know, whatever. You can get great info for him. And for the guys and gals in my age group, I use a Total Gym, which is really safe way to get your resistance training. You don't have, you know, the bands and stuff are great, but they can cause injury. Whereas a Total Gym, it's just your body weight. And so I bought an Encompass version of the Total Gym, works out really well for me. And I use an elliptical just because of my age and the condition of my joints and my body. But find what works for you. But, you know, if you're young and healthy, definitely, you know, read Dan's book, get a hold of Brian White at Hit and Run, talk to the folks at O2X. You know, if you're looking to get a department a thing going, there's a lot of great resources out there for you know, for getting into condition. And there's a million excuses for it. I had a dad bod for years, just like everybody else. I get it. When the kids are underfoot and you're struggling to make ends meet, and you're working 2 jobs, and dealing with all that, I get it. You know, I went through the dad bod phase too, and we all do. But, you know, as soon as you can reconnect with and here's a picture that I have to say, I've got grave concerns about working out in gear, and I'm just going to say it. There needs to be a better way to do that than wearing our gear. Our gear is not a costume. It's not workout clothing. I understand what's trying to be accomplished here, but I'm opposed to it. We now know that you could be shedding PFOAs and PFOSs. We have at least a concern about that. It's tough on the gear. It's not what the gear was meant for. And it also is a problem with your mindset. When you put on your gear to do anything but structural firefighting, your mindset is not locking into the fact that when you put on your battle rattle, your life is at risk, and you should act like it. It's not time to go join the guys on the treadmill. So I've got a problem with doing this. Now, could just be me, but I get paid to have an opinion, so I'm going to share it with you. I don't think we should be doing that. It's degrading the gear in ways that we may or may not understand. It's screwing with your mindset for when you really need to be wearing it. And I think there's better and healthier ways to acclimate yourself to the gear without actually wearing gear on a treadmill. I'm just going to say it.
Oh, I can appreciate that, and that's a great view of that. One thing again, I'm just trying to emphasize is let's do something. And if you don't want to use your turnout gear, again, professional athletes, right? They have days where they don't wear any of their pads and stuff to practice, and we can do the same thing. But what highlighting here again is do something. You mentioned a lot of those resources, and just like how many different studies there are that are showing the problem with firefighting and cardiac related stuff, there's so many resources out there that we can reach out to get fitness information. You mentioned O2X. Yes, O2X is a great organization. We have a relationship with them in the DC Fire Department. Fit to Fight Fire, great guys that are doing some good stuff there. Again, there's social media stuff. Coach
JC, I forgot about Coach JC.
Wonderful. Those guys from they were Colorado and stuff. They're there. We got Aaron Zamzow from Fire Rescue Fitness. He's got information. You mentioned Kerrigan. Don't forget Jim Moss is part of that as well. And there's lots of resources available for you. So again, it's not a gym membership. It's not a big investment that you have to do. There's lots of resources. Just like everything, there's lots of places right on the internet that we can go find videos of fires that went good, went bad. There's internet. We can go get studies on heart health. You can also go on the internet and find resources available for physical fitness. And I suggest these are just some of them that are out there.
Tony, I was going to add too, and I know we only have a short amount of time that we we get to spend with our audience. But at LifeSkin on our website, we actually have a cardiac toolbox, we call it, resource. It brings a lot of Dan Kerrigan's books on there, a lot of the different resources that are out there. We've pulled them all together. So if you go to www.lifescanwellness.com, you'll see there's a toolbox tab, and then there's a cardiac tab right under that. So folks are searching for some of the things we're talking about today. It's an easy way to pull it together.
Yeah, and that link will be linked into the Mayday Monday posting, along with the slide that you saw at the beginning. We'll have some other links on there for some of these resources, so you can find Chief LeDuc's information there. You mentioned one big one, I think, that is the underlying condition case, right? Some of you know, again, from following Mayday Monday, I had a friend, fellow firefighter here in DC, who passed away from a cardiac event. Here is my post about that. We touched on this at the FDIC class. Kevin Macrae. Kevin Macrae was probably the poster child of the DC Fire Department. Grew up in DC schools, joined the fire department, is a 24, a young kid, was a 24-year member, was really at some of the busiest companies in the city. If there's somebody you wanted, again, on the DC Fire Department poster, it would be Kevin. Kevin was assigned to Engine 6 downtown, busy place. They went out one morning for a fire. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. They went out for this fire. You see a picture there. The fire was on the 9th floor of the 10-story building, one that we go to pretty regularly. He and his crew, they went upstairs. They extinguished the fire. And as they were coming out to get new bottles and take a break, Kevin dropped dead. I believe his heart literally blew up. The tough part about that was on 7th Street in DC, and there's a hospital 10 blocks north. But due to the state of his emergency, they weren't able to regain a heartbeat and make him and get him to survive the heart attack that he had. What they found in the after action, and the NIOSH came in, investigated. Of course, we did internal stuff inside too. They found that he suffered from hypertension, hyperlipidemia, abnormal EKGs, he had sinus tachycardia, he had obstructive sleep apnea, and he had obesity. Again, the obesity, I think you can see a picture there of Kevin, not what you would think of as obese, but from the science where you look at height and that kind of thing, he was considered obese. Again, in DC, we do have stress tests. His last stress test, he reached 7 meds. The target there again is 12. So the underlying heart conditions, the underlying issues there, Chief LeDuc, can you touch on some of that stuff and how can we find out about it?
Sure. First of all, my condolences to the department and Kevin's family, and I think the greatest honor we can do to any fallen brother or sister is to learn and try to put into place so we don't continue to have these tragedies. But you're absolutely right. What we know, even on stress testing, is there's not 100% sensitivity. So some of the work that Dr. Denise Smith, and I've been honored to serve with her on, is looking at using cardiac echo to screen for enlarged left ventricle, which is typically caused by obesity, poorly treated hypertension. Also recommending a baseline cardiac calcification screening. So we can actually see calcified plaque within the coronary vessels. And then more aggressive, the statistics that are out there. I mean, I'll use my department. Our first time using LifeScan wellness centers for our annual physicals. And I think at the time we were 650 members. 60 of our firefighters had either stage 1 or stage 2 hypertension that they didn't realize. So they're walking around, they're going to calls, they're doing active training evolutions with a really great risk of having a a major coronary event. Same with lipids and high glucose levels. We see that in a large number of the cardiac events that occur in firefighters. It's exactly what you saw with Kevin. The key is early identification and then intervention. And we need to be, mindful. I tell people all the time, the screening recommendations, when to get a colonoscopy, when to get a breast mammogram. Those are for general population. I think we all know firefighters have a lot different risk, and we operate in a lot different environment than general population. So that enhanced screening, I'm proud to say at LifeScan, we've been utilizing cardiac echo for 23 years. So that's part of our approach to the NFPA 1582 physicals. But we really need to continue to educate our providers. We need to have firefighters be seen by clinicians that know what the fire service is all about, that know the risks, that keep up with the latest research. And we need to really look at the culture too, right? Because sometimes we think if, I admit that I've got a little blood pressure or if I'm a little overweight. I mean, we know the FLAME study says if we don't work out and we don't eat right, the average firefighter puts on about 2 pounds per year. So we just need to, change just like we do with our apparatus. I love that analogy that you started with. We wouldn't think of not fueling up our apparatus when it's low fuel. We wouldn't think of not doing preventative oil changes or filter changes. And we really need the same mindset for our bodies. And, if it's not for us, Bobby touched on this briefly, but, it's been said that when we hit the fireground, our risk becomes everyone's risk. And that really is the case. And if, we're not doing it for ourselves, we need to be thinking of doing it for our family and for our fellow brother and sisters. So nothing to be scared of or afraid of. Most all of the things that you put up on Kevin's findings are, if we find them early and we intervene, are very manageable, and you can go on to have a long career and even hopefully longer retirement in good health. So the key is just having that regular monitoring. And we touched on, we're learning more and more as we go. We just had a study come out showing higher rates in firefighters. So the more fire you're exposed to, the higher prevalence of atrial fibrillation or an irregular heartbeat. And with atrial fibrillation, if it's not managed, we can throw clots. So we have higher rates of heart disease and stroke. So, there's almost nothing. I mean, we're not talking about cancer today, but really, if you look at any disease process, if we find it early, it's typically very manageable. Most cancers are found at stage 1 or precancers have survival rates, of 90s to 100%. So cardiovascular death is no different.
Yeah, I think let me go real quick, Bobby, but I think we would not want someone to be on our fire truck with us who doesn't have the training, right? That I remember years ago again, we did a big push for some firefighter survival training, right? And it was one of those things where everybody had to have it, and if you didn't have it, you couldn't ride the rig or what have you. So the same thing should apply with our health, right? Again, if you don't have the firefighter training and you go down, you could be a burden. It's going to be a whole nother event, right? Everybody's going to be involved in the rescue. The same thing is going to happen if you have a cardiac event, right? Everybody's going to be involved, and it's going to be tough to survive that. Much like going down in a burning building for whatever. A collapse or something like that. They're tough to survive. The same thing's going to happen with the cardiac event, and we want to make sure that everybody's on the same, right, has got that minimum, if you will, a good heart to be able to work.
One of the things we didn't mention earlier was the growing interest in the fire service with yoga, which has tremendous benefits, not only in developing a more limber physical capability and good muscle tone and cardio. It also helps with controlling one's mindset and focus, which can be, it's another great tool in the toolbox. I think that, one of the things to keep in mind too is that, there's no silver bullets. And as Todd said, screenings and stress tests and all of those things, they're all critically important. But as Denise's work has shown, and Dr. Brown's work has shown, and now the great work that's being done by the doc in Arizona, Dr. Mitchell, the work he's doing now that shows how heat itself, and we're not exactly sure we're not sure, the doc's not exactly sure how it's doing what it's doing, but it's messing with us at almost a cellular level, like even at the earliest exposures. So, how that relates to cardiac health and wellness, cortisol levels from the stress, it's just we're in a really tough job when it comes to longevity, and anything we can do. And I'm sorry for being, I don't mean to be rude or dismissive of anybody who's using their gear to work out. Perhaps if we had gear that was just made, perhaps if there was some kind of suit that we could wear that mimics gear would be a better idea. Maybe that's a better thing for me to say. Maybe, snow clothing or something like that. I don't know. I just think that our gear is so important to be maintained in a ready condition at all times. It's so, anytime we wear our battle rattle, our mindset should change, because our lives depend on not only our battle rattle, but our wits and our focus. And we have to be in the green, so to speak. We have to be, everything else has to be out of our minds. We have to be focused on survival and saving people. And so I apologize for being so emotional earlier, but currently we really don't know the risks that our gear might be putting us at. And we know that there are some chemicals in our gear that are forever chemicals. And we do know they're not good. So we should do everything we can to lessen our exposure to them. So I apologize. I didn't mean to be dismissive of anybody's great intentions, and they were all great intentions. So I apologize for that from the depths of my heart, seriously. So maybe there's an opportunity there for someone to create, the bunker gear mimicking outfit, if you will, which I think is important, right? You practice like you train. You know what I mean? You have to have gear on to do certain things in drill, and I get that, so that you know how to, get the muscle memory and all that correct for when it matters. I mean, I don't think we can train without gear. So I didn't mean to come off as dismissive or rude, and I apologize for getting so caught up, but I'm so worried about all of it, right? And on top of all of that, it's, there's so much to learn, and we're continuing to learn, and nobody has all the answers. Nobody. I don't care. You could put Vinnie Dunn inside of Alan Bernasini, inside of Tommy Brennan, inside of Dick Sylvia, inside of James Braidwood, and you'd still have a guy who's got 1,000 years of learning to catch up to 10 characters from DC, or 11 characters from Duluth, or 5 characters from Des Moines. It's just, there's this job is constantly going to be putting stresses on you: physical, emotional, spiritual, chemical, cardiac, all of it. Any little thing you can do, and trust me, working out is probably one of the most selfish things you can possibly do. And I'm totally obsessed with myself. And so I work out every day religiously. I mean, every day I do something for an hour, and sometimes longer. My wife would argue 2 hours or more. But it's so important. It's so important to every aspect of your life. And it's no guarantee. So on top of that, make sure you're right with the world. Make sure make sure you haven't hurt anybody or harmed anybody or left behind any hard feelings. You know what I mean? And because you never know the hour. And so what Todd is here and what Tony's trying to do is make sure that, to the best of their abilities, we don't succumb to what we know, right? There's always going to be what we don't know, and surprises happen, but we're trying to limit them to your birthday.
So we have, you mentioned working out. And again, all the resources that are out there, do something. Look, I mean, I want to show you one of our friends here in Virginia, Robbie Owens, firefighter here in Henrico, Virginia. He put this up on Twitter, which is always good to see, right? And it's something pretty basic. You can see here he's got one of those weighted sandbags. He's tied it to a piece of webbing, and he's going to drag it down the apparatus floor, turn around and come back. Right? That didn't take a gym membership. It didn't take the whole crew even, right? It didn't take much, but he's doing something. Now, again, we can add more to that, right? Now once he does a couple of these down and backs, maybe he takes the sandbag and picks it up and puts it over his head and puts it back down, right? Gets some kind of resistance, some kind of cardio, but that's a cheap one right there you could do. If you didn't want to go out and buy a sandbag, right, you can just get the bag of sand from Home Depot or whatever you use and drag that around. But here he's got the store-bought sandbag, right, and fill that up and a piece of webbing.
Keep it simple. That's great.
It reminded me of, he's doing like little fartlicks. It's a fartlek is a runner's term for little short sprints that you do over and over again. So he's almost like doing a fartlek with a drag with a drag, which is really, really creative when you think about it. And think of all the things that could mimic on the fire ground, right? That could be a down firefighter that you're pulling on the rescue harness device. It could be some equipment that you need to drag. It could be hose.
Yeah, it could be a hose drag, right?
Yeah, it could be a hose. It could be hose. That's brilliant. Robbie is, besides being just a great guy, that's a really cool idea, and he is a really great guy.
So again, back to our overall stuff here. I think one of the things that we don't really have, right, is the shock of how many people we're actually killing in cardiac events. Last year, the Mayday Monday that was for last year, let me see if I can get it up here again, tried to highlight some of that. You can see here, we did this one right here, this how many firefighters are killed. Are more firefighters killed venting roofs or eating donuts? We have a social media storm sometimes in the fire service where, don't get on roofs. Roofs are killing firefighters. Well, actually, if you look at the numbers and look at the data, I think more firefighters are probably dying from eating those donuts than are venting roofs. Again, cardiac issues killed 59 firefighters in 2018. Imagine if the headline said, ventilation killed 59 firefighters in 2018. What would we be doing? We would stop going on roofs, right? There would be classes at FDIC on how to vent not getting on roofs. There would be T-shirts made that says, I don't get on roofs, right? There would be no roof nation if we had that. But that's not what's happening. So I'm not saying we should drop donuts, right? Donuts are great. But moderation. Here, and one thing that the Mayday Monday loves is the American Heart Association's Life Simple 7. Again, Life Simple 7. 7 things you can do that don't cost a lot of money and that you can do to help out with your cardiac health. Number 1, manage your blood pressure. Again, that's going to take a doctor to help you out with that, or you can just stay calm. Control your cholesterol, reduce your blood sugar, get active, eat better, lose weight, quit smoking. Nothing there that really costs a lot or should be a big life changer, but that can change your life.
So I'll throw out one other thing too. One of the things to remember too is be careful about body shaming and thinking that just because someone's large that they're not in good shape or that they're fat, because there are individuals who are just larger individuals and they carry it well and they're cardiovascularly fit and they're not overtaxing their heart. So just because someone looks to you like they're overweight they're not. And many of the cardiac deaths that I know were men and women who were, like 5% and 2% body fat. Being lean doesn't mean you're cardiac healthy either. It helps. Now, reducing excess body fat, especially in the wrong places, can help you reduce your cardiac stress. That's true. But there are men and women who are larger, who are perfectly healthy. And a lot of what we've done with our categories, if you will, that we've become enamored with, is we've created these stereotypical body types saying your height and this, you should be that. Well, that is so limited. When you get with people like LifeScan and other real medical professionals, they'll tell you that those things are just like, they're so broad, they're almost, dismissive, because you can have larger people who are much healthier than someone who's 5% or 2% body fat. So think about your lifetime smoker and emphysemic who weighs next to nothing. I would take that over somebody who's carrying an extra 10 or 20 any day. And don't beat yourself up, as Tony said too. If you put on a few pounds, okay, pay attention. And the other thing is that roofs and donuts are both good. I support roof operations and I support donut shops. So, but I think you do it intelligently and you do it when it's appropriate, right? You don't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the donut shop, and you don't have to go up on every single roof.
Yeah, and I think Bobby, that's a great point. And I think Tony touched on moderation, right? And I think it was Yang that published a study that looked at post-mortem autopsies on our fallen cardiovascular death firefighters, and about 63%, I think, was the number, were actually on post-mortem were obese. So not a little bit overweight, but largely visceral fat, which again puts strain on the heart. Probably with it comes high blood pressure, glucose. So that little chart from the American Heart with those 7, I mean, there's not one on there that it tremendously reduces the risk, and it's easy steps that we can take. And you probably didn't get to a point overnight, and it may take you time to get back to a state of wellness. But it's, I think getting into the mindset that we've got to take care of our bodies from day one when we come on the job, throughout our career. I mean, we all strive to serve and then have a long and healthy retirement, but it takes work. It just doesn't happen by accident.
I throw out one other adjunct, Tony, and Todd, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. A good buddy of mine, I just spoke with him the other day. He had to have a pacemaker inserted, and the way he discovered his issue, and he's my age, just for full disclosure, but he's still active. He wears one of those watches that gives you biofeedback, and he noticed he was bradycardic, and he said, well, that's pretty weird. And then it happened to him again, and he thought, well, that's pretty weird. I should go get it checked out. Like seconds after he landed in the hospital, they were like grabbing the crash cart and getting him ready for the cath lab, and but the watch thing, and I don't own one of those things. But what are your thoughts on those kind? Oh, you have? Okay, tell us about that.
No, I think in fact, I think Bobby and Pete, you were nice enough to publish recently. I did an article for Fire Engineering Online on mega trends that I see anyways. And I think wearable technology, assisted by probably artificial intelligence, will be one of the driving factors on firefighter health and wellness, because there are a lot of biometrics, whether that's hydration status, irregular heart rhythm. You mentioned, pulse being one of them, and so many others that we're able to now, and I'm sure it's going to exponentially grow as technology continues to expand. You look at some of these tech firms at how much they've invested in healthcare apps. The numbers are just insane. So obviously they see this as a driver. But no, I think just as we've talked about, Denise Smith recommending the need for cardiac ultrasound and some other enhanced imaging for cardiac and firefighters, I think wearable technology is going to revolutionize how we manage our own health, not just in the fire service, but in the general population as well. We're seeing that on the cancer front now, with wearable, whether it's dog tags or silicone wrist bracelets for tracking our exposures to carcinogens as well. So I think, Bobby, that's probably the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, no, I think the technology is great. I have a watch that tells me, right, even reminds me to move. You've been sitting around too long to get up and move, and it's something simple. I mean,
I married one, Tony.
We also shows your sleep.
Up.
I like it because it can show your sleep too, right? And you can see how bad your sleep is. Something else that is influencing or is hurting us is our bad sleep. Now,
great resource for that, Tony, is a guy named Walker. His book, I can't remember the title, but the man's name is Walker. If you put in your Amazon search, Walker and sleep, wonderful book.
But that's another thing, right? I mean, there's so many things right now with this sleep, whether it's sleep, whether it's the turnout gear, whether it is, whether it's the chemicals in the turnout gear, or just the fact that the turnout gear adds so much stress onto our heart, whether it's that, whether it's the hot environment. There's so many things for us to take in about heart health that ultimately, if we could boil it down to something that's very simple, would be that Life Simple 7, right? What we saw there from the American Heart Association about the Life Simple 7. I'm going to show that again because I really like it, and it's simple. It also shows the donut, but it's this: manage your blood pressure, control your cholesterol, reduce your blood sugar, get active, eat better, lose weight, quit smoking.
And I would add a couple, Tony, and especially for us, stay up to date on your CPR. You know what I mean? Make sure that you have an airway adjunct, in your home, in your car. You know what I mean? Maybe in your, if you're going hiking with your buddies or going out on the lake, because with our skill sets, we can make such a difference for people because, you're never off duty. We all know that. If something happens, you're going to jump in. You might as well be ready. Have an airway adjunct, know your be up to date on your CPR. It could be a fellow firefighter that you're camping with that you could save their lives. So always be alert and keep your eye on your friends. And when you're doing stuff, when you are working out, look for that. If someone seems to be falling out a little or having a little bit of a struggle, make sure that they are okay. It's okay to have a bad day, or it might be like my buddy. Suddenly he noticed he was having a little bit of an irregular heart rate. So, I think those 7 are great for you, but I think like most of us always agree, the most rewarding part about being a firefighter is we get to do for others.
That's a good point, Chief LeDuc. I want to give you some closing remarks here. We have wrapped this thing up from our Heart Health Month, but what can you, couple of things maybe that we could take home that will really drive home the points?
Yeah, absolutely. I would wrap your 7 or the American Heart 7 into really, I can't stress this enough. I mean, it tells me how much work we still have to do when I shared, the IFC's findings at 20% of career and 40% of volunteer departments. We still need to be doing annual occupational physicals. And I think that's so important because all those 7 points you touched on, and Bobby added a couple great pearls that certainly just dovetail into that. But a lot of them require some one-on-one coaching, mentoring, if you want to call it, guidance, right? So if I'm being seen by a clinician in my annual physical, and the clinician's up to date on firefighter health, and I've got a little bit of high blood pressure, simply having that discussion that puts me 12 times higher risk, 12 times, think about that, from having a fatal cardiac event because I'm a firefighter. I know I would be taken back a little bit and probably pay a lot closer attention to those risk factors. So I think assuring in departments that we get occupational physicals by folks that know firefighters and know our risks. And that's no disrespect to any healthcare provider. I have, a wonderful physician that is my primary, but I'm probably one of 3 firefighters in his practice. So it's tough for him to stay on top of, all the evolving research. I mean, we're doing this full time, and it's tough for us to do it. So the other thing, and I don't think we really touched on it, but I want to leave it in closing, is we really shouldn't come at this from a perspective of fear. And I think that's a natural inclination sometimes, that we're afraid to learn about our health. That's why we don't want a physical. We don't want to know. I've had firefighters in my own department tell me, Chief, if I've got cancer, I'd rather not know. That doesn't make a lot of sense in so many different, ways. But I think that as leaders in the fire service, in departments, it's important that, we approach this really for what it is just want to make sure that we have a healthy workforce. The National Fallen Firefighters has termed the Everyone Goes Home program, and that really needs to be something that we put continually into practice. So that requires, more than just everyone goes home adage. It requires us to take proactive and preventative measures. And I think we're doing a better job now than at least in my last 34 years on the job. But obviously, by the stats we've all talked about today and some of the stories you've shared, Tony, it's obvious we have more work to do. And that's why I think the value of this information getting out there, and fire service members hearing that nothing to be afraid about. The things that are killing us from cardiac, they're all relatively easy to address, so we can kind of make a dent in this cycle. And inherently there'll always be risk in what we do, but shame on us if we don't manage the preventable risk.
That's great stuff. That's great stuff. And like you said, it's just do something, right? It's not wholesale change all at once, but incremental changes can prolong, can increase, can add. We know how tough this job can be on our bodies, and we want to give it the best that we can. So whether it's emphasizing or investing in training or investing in heart health, these are all important things for firefighter survival. Mayday Mondays are about firefighter survival, and that's why this is so important. That's why out of the 12 months of the year, one of these months is going to be devoted to heart health. February is it. So we have to focus on this. It's killing our people, it's killing our members, and we want to make sure that we get these numbers down. Everybody goes home, whatever it takes. In order to go home, you need to come in kind of healthy so you can survive the difficulty of that 24, 12-hour, 8-hour shift, whatever you're doing. But we want to make sure that we can survive it. Bobby, do you want to have some closing remarks here?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Todd and to you, Tony, for this great Mayday Monday. There's so much out there to pay attention to. This is a big one, right? This is a big one, and obviously, we're a reflection of society. So eat right, exercise, take care of yourself, and try to lift everybody else up. If you can encourage somebody else to take a walk with you, or take a run with you, or go into the workout room. Lift up your brothers and sisters, especially those that are maybe having a hard time. And habits are hard to make and hard to break. You know what I mean? So you start eating right, you start exercising, start going to church, which is important. That you make a habit of it, and it becomes part of your life, and life gets better. So how to throw a little church stuff in there, Tony. Stay on God's good side. So
well, I would like everybody to make it a habit to check out the Mayday Monday podcast once a month, hour, maybe an hour and a half. You could devote to it. This month, we did not emphasize a line of duty death, a person who died of a line of duty death. We did talk about Kevin Macrae. Go out and learn about him. Great guy. Miss him a lot. He was made an impact on the DC Fire Department. You probably know someone who has died of a cardiac event in the fire service. If you haven't, there's lots to go research. Find someone, find out what happened to them, and learn from it. So again, thank you for coming to Mayday Monday. We'll see you next month.
Stay safe out there.
Bye, fellas.